And so in doing that, we've talked to probably 75 different coaches, Division I, NAIA, Division II, Division III, wrestling, cross country. And so we've covered quite a bit of wrestling. We're big fans, and obviously want to talk to you because you are the voice of wrestling. Mhm.
Well,
All
I'm
right,
looking
y'all.
forward to it. Appreciate it.
Okay, sorry. All right, y'all. We are live. We're going belly to belly tonight, as we do. One night we're on the track. One next night we're on the wrestling mat. So we're back on the wrestling mat. We are joined by the voice of wrestling, Jason Bryant. He's a wrestling broadcaster, public address announcer, and a journalist with over 28 years experience. You name it, he's covered it. NCAA Division I, Division III, NAIA wrestling. He's announced 3 Olympic Games. He's done 5 UWW Senior World Wrestling Championships. He's the founder of Mat Talk Online, a leading broadcast network for wrestling content, and has produced over 3,000 podcast episodes. He currently announces wrestling matches at the University of Arkansas Little Rock. He does hockey with St. Cloud State, and he also does some stuff with Augsburg, who we just had on not too long ago. So, Jason, thank you for joining Jimmy and I. Welcome to Airey Bros Radio. Thank you for your time. How we doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Just full from a nice dinner. My wife and I had to make it a little early. We got playing around the show and then playing around like the parenting stuff with my seventh grader, who's got some meet the teacher stuff tonight because she was out for a couple weeks and now getting back in the groove. But it's been a long time. I know you guys been you reached out several months ago and it was like in the heart of my season. I'm like, I'm not blowing you off. Trust me, I'm not. I'm not. I've just got a bunch of stuff. I get kind of scatterbrained with everything that's going on with all the levels of wrestling and then adding hockey to it. So I'm glad we finally got this done. I know this has been something that's been on your radar. It's been on my radar. It's been flagged in my email for months. I actually do use the flags in my email with the thousands that I seem to acquire every month, or I don't even know. It's just if I tried to count my inbox right now, it'd be disastrous. But glad we got it finally here. It's finally here. We're finally here.
The moment we've all been waiting for. Yes, we are. One thing that Airey Bros do, we talk about it all the time, is 80% of success is just showing up, and that's what Jimmy and I will do when we are passionate about something. That is what has allowed us to have some of the athletic success that we have. Maybe not be the biggest or the strongest or the fastest or the most talented with the most technique, but we will show up day after day after day. So, and Jimmy is pretty persistent when it comes to booking, and we appreciate you keeping us flagged and getting us on here. But before we get into it too far, we like to anything, anywhere you would like the people to find you, the podcast, socials, any of that stuff. The floor is yours.
Yeah, the easiest place is mattalkonline.com. That is the home of all the shows on the Mat Talk Podcast Network. It's been kind of an ebb and flow over the years. It started with the Short Time Wrestling Podcast and On the Mat, which I recorded for Kyle Klingman from back when he was at the Dan Gable Museum. After we worked together at Wrestling 411. Short Time is the flagship, even though the flag doesn't get raised very much on that show, since I tend to put all the other client shows before mine. So we've had team shows on Virginia Tech and NC State were clients for a long time. That place in Norfolk, we had Buena Vista on for a while. Maryland, they were early on, and then the podcast situation kind of exploded. The hands-on, it wasn't as cumbersome for people to do it. Now you can do podcasts on your phone. So the professional services that I once offered to teams and programs isn't as needed anymore because it's a lot easier to do. I mean, we've got software. I mean, we've got Zoom integrations that can stream right to YouTube, kind of like we're doing now. It's not as hard. So teams have kind of taken control of that. We've had team shows pop up, but we've got teams like that on the network. NC State's still on the network, self-producing theirs. Purdue's on the network. So you can get all sorts of shows. We've got Shane Sparks with his Go Earn It podcast. Well, he has some great guests. He's been rocking with that show. That's on the network. Tommy and Kevin up at Blood Round up in Michigan. They're just two guys. They crown themselves two idiots talking about wrestling. Well, they're not idiots, but they sit there. They're on the network. We just have a lot of shows that filter in. So it's a way to get a lot of different content at mattalkonline.com. Personally, my wife and I were talking the other day that I'm kind of boring at 45 years old. I kind of checked the box. I'm not a TikTok guy. I'm still struggling with reels on Instagram, but you get facts, stats, and you're going to learn something. So if you like Wordle in the morning, you got that. I don't do the weather tweets anymore because Elon broke the integration on Twitter. So sorry, no more weather in New Brighton, Minnesota. But that's at Jason M Bryant on the Twitter, or the X, formerly known as Twitter. Same with Instagram. I like the Matt Talk Online is also there on X as well. The Media Association, which I've been the president of for about 12 years, at Media Wrestle. That's where you get a ton of news from around the world that I put into my newsletter at mattalkonline.com/news. So you can get the newsletter delivered to you almost every morning. If there's a slow news day, or if I just want to watch some TV with my wife and kids, I may not do it every day, or slow news days. Usually Monday mornings, you're not going to get a whole lot during the off season. So mattalkonline.com, you hit that /news. That's where you can sign up the newsletter. The socials, usually it's at Jason M Bryant. So you'll get wrestling, and then you'll get, as the college hockey season approaches here in about a week, you'll get a little bit more St. Cloud State Husky hockey in there too, because I'm about to start year 3 with them. So I've got St. Cloud State wrestling and hockey. I've got Little Rock wrestling, and I've got Augsburg wrestling as they fit together. So that's how my fall and winter seasons all kind of meld together. So, and that's where you can find me talking about those schools, as well as everything when it comes to every level of wrestling, because it's not just D1 that I'm focused on. I've announced D3s in the NAIA since 2016. I used to go to the D2s. I've actually only been to one junior college tournament. That was back in 2009 in here in Minnesota. But I love every level of wrestling. I still haven't been to the California Community College Championships. That's a to-do list thing. It's just it's just got to work, and it never really has. And then the NCAA, I still haven't been to them because they usually overlap with either D3 or the NAIA. So I love all levels of wrestling. I still haven't been in the women's championships. I'm trying to hope that when they get that official national championship status for the NCAA, they can shift a little bit away from the men's postseason, so we have an opportunity to focus on them more. But that's where I'm at. That's where I'll be, and that's where you can find me.
Sweet. Thank you. The California stuff, that's in the fall, right?
Yeah, they started wrestling. Matter of fact, there was a duel last night in Bakersfield beat Moore Park or something. I got an email for it, but yeah, they've been a fall system since I think 1982, and it works well for them. If you talk to some of their old coaches, like Dave Pacheco, who retired at Sacramento City College, he goes, "Yeah, I love it. I can sit there and get my stuff done, and then I get to go to nationals, and then I go to D2 and D3s and watch all my other in the NAIs where all his kids went." Because they're 2-year schools, they get their 4-year. I can go. They're recruiting my kids, and then I can go watch D1s. I don't have my own tournaments to worry about. So the coaches out there that have the long tenures, the Vince Silvas out there, the Paul Keesaws, the Dave Pachecos, they really love that fall season.
Yeah, that's interesting, and we'll probably get into that sort of stuff in the 1 semester, 2 semester type stuff. But before we get too deep into it, Jason, the most important question you're going to hear from the Airey Bros probably tonight is, where is your favorite place to get a Juicy Lucy?
It's not the traditional spots. There was a place, it's called Axel's. It's in White Bear Lake. It's right actually, it was the hotel my wife and I had our people stay at when we got married. When we met up here in Minnesota, the first time I lived here, she lived in White Bear Township. White Bear Lake is, just a mile or two down the road. It's the kind of the proper. And there was a place called Axel's that's connected to the hotel. And Matt's I haven't been to the other place. Matt's is one of the originals, but there's something about there's the Juicy Lucy that scorches your face off.
Mhm.
Be careful with that. I like that. But if I want a bigger burger with that's jammed in, it's not the sloppy, greasy spoon Juicy Lucy. I like this place in White Bear Lake called Axel's. So it's not a place I get to very often, but it's a really solid burger.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Yeah, we go ahead, Jim.
So one other one I have for you, a little bit of an icebreaker. I know you do the wrestling shirt a day when that comes up, and I saw on your feed the Virginia Duels. Do you have a Cox Wrestling t-shirt?
I do not. I had actually, you know what? Have I ever had one? That's what I'm trying to think. When Matt Small was coaching there, no, because he gave me the Great Bridge shirts when he was at Great Bridge. So I don't think I've ever had a Frank W. Cox Falcons wrestling shirt. I've had actually, now that I think about it, I don't have that many shirts from Virginia. Now that I think, I've had a Great Bridge shirt. My high school alma mater, Eric Decker, the coach there, he sent me a couple shirts actually last week that I was wearing around, and I had a Picosin shirt in about 20 years, and then the other ones I had from that was from when I was in high school, 96 and 97. So nope, never had a Cox Falcons wrestling shirt, but if you're watching, yeah, hey, you know where to find me.
Yeah, and send one to the Airey Bros, because that was a t-shirt that slipped through my fingers out at Fargo back in the day. I tried to acquire one, but they wanted a hefty price for it that I was not willing to pay.
Do you remember who you were trying to who you're negotiating with? You
So
remember?
it's funny you asked me this because I was thinking of this today when I was getting this question up. I wrestled him and he beat me at the East Coast. So I was a 98 pounder. He wound up All American at 98. This was back in 2003. Um, but I couldn't remember his name. I believe he went to Virginia Tech.
What are they? Cox around 2003. Let's see how quickly I can pull this up. Let's see how quick can I answer this question. To the database we go. You've
I
given
believe
me years in a weight class.
believe he got fifth at 98 in
98. Let's
2003.
see.
I
I'm
might
just
be
I'm upset I don't know it off the top of my head, to be quite honest with you. So
Fisklin, Ryan Fisklin, maybe.
Brett Fiskus. Brett Fiskus
Hmm.
might be it. I don't think he placed in Fargo though. Let's see.
Might have been a Great Bridge transfer too. I'm not. I might be making
That one you're
something
gonna have to be a little bit more specific. Sorry, guys.
up.
Let's see. So you said 2003?
Yeah.
Walker Faison. That's duh.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Walker.
Damn, you're good, Jason.
Well, no,
This
I
is
just said, because I don't remember Walker ever being that small when he was in Fargo, but yeah, I guess he was. That's because Matt Lance was the starter at 103 Walker's freshman year, because Matt Lance
Yeah.
was a senior 103 pounder who was built like he was like 5 foot nothing and just diesel.
He
Yeah.
won senior nationals, right?
Yeah, eventually I believe he did. Yeah, he wrestled
Yeah.
Michigan State, and Colin Dozier was also one of his teammates, was also there with him. So some Spartans had some Falcons out there. Didn't have to change the color scheme a whole lot because they were just green and white. But yeah, Walker. Yeah, that's a name. Walker. It's weird because I see him on we're Facebook friends, and I saw him post the other day. I was like, yeah, 30. So I was like, man, Walker. When did all those kids that I covered when they were in middle school and high school get old? Like that means I'm old, man. Because I remember Walker wrestling at like the middle school, or when we first launched the middle school state championships in Virginia in 1999. We had guys like him and Matt Rosen, who was ended up going to Great Bridge, and all the kids from the PWA, the wrestling club I spent a brief amount of time in, in my hometown. It's just like, yeah, I see some of these names. I mean, and looking at that year, so in '03. Walker Faison, Nathaniel Barbie also plays. He was at Stonewall, what was used to be known as Stonewall Jackson. Jordan Frischkorn, Bubba Jenkins, Casey Staler, Chris Brown. Yeah, that was a pretty good run of kids that came through in that stretch for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today. Like Virginia had some really good kids, like especially because Great Bridge was like 2 or 3 back then, I believe. And I remember we used to wrestle them at duels. Like, oh, you're about to get beat up. But
Yeah, Stevie had some monster teams before he went to that place in Norfolk. I mean, they were nationally ranked as high as, I think they were second. They've been second and third. And those are the years that Blair and St. Ed's were kind of trading the 1 and 2. And some years, it was usually Blair was not leaving the 1 or 2. But at one point, Great Bridge was the number 1 public school in the nation, and they proudly were proud of that fact. It was on their jackets, on the back of their jackets too. Number 1 public school in the country. So
so
Stevie had some good teams.
I must ask you because you kind of brought it up. Rich and I were talking before we hopped on. We were kind of wondering, why do you think he was so successful at Great Bridge and wasn't able to duplicate that at at that place in Norfolk?
Actually, see, I kind of disagree because the level of talent that you dealt with in Division I was in that top half. That's all the best kids. Now, I think Steve, where he was really good, is taking a really good kid and making him really, really good or making him great. And so there's a lot of development in the high school. When you get them in college, they're already really, really good. So, like Steve's gotten them to that point. It was getting them. It's like, okay, where's Steve going to get them to that next level? And when the time that he had more All-Americans at ODU than the school previously had in its entire history before that. And that includes, some of those really good Division II years. So Steve had success. You have to measure Old Dominion's success at the time against what they had before. They weren't fully funded prior to him getting there. So he had fully funded. They never had a full-time assistant coach. Gray Simons, who I didn't wrestle in college, but I called Gray my college coach. Gray had a part-time assistant pretty much the entire time he was there, and maybe 6.5 rides. And the wrestling room we were in back then was jagged. It had pillars running through it. It was bad. So Steve got some resources, and to see what they were. I mean, they didn't have an All-American when James Nicholson placed, beat Raleigh Peterkin in the blood round. I want to say in 2008, 2007, 2008, right around there. It was not. You have to go back to 1995. So, as good as Gray was, for example, with his technique and stuff, he didn't have the resources. And then Steve, you finally give somebody like Steve some resources, and then you got to have kids that take chances on programs like ODU. It's not like he was getting all these blue chippers to compete against other Virginia high schools where, okay, I got a really good group of Virginia high school kids. I just have to beat those kids. Stevie was really good at coaching a match. There's a guy you'd look at like, we need that matchup. They'd know how to beat that guy in that matchup. I mean, he's really good. I think the only guy I think that ever kind of got one over on Steve in terms of at the high school level was Jeff Buxton, because when you saw like the Frischkorns or you saw those guys wrestle against the Blair kids, the Grammy stuff is great, and it's more than just rolls, but that whole the whole series, the whole system with the inside steps and the Wayne's rolls and the shoulder rolls and stuff. It's more than just, oh, we're just going to roll to our back and go. Buxton, like Corey Cooperman would just, that was kryptonite for those guys. Cooperman's like, no, you're not going to hit that stuff on me. And that was Buxton. So I think Steve did a very good job as a college coach. Is he have the resources that the Power 5 schools do? No. But for a mid-major school that went from nothing and not having an All-American, and then it took some time to get one, then you get two. And then to be in the top 25 in the dual rankings for pretty much his entire time there were a lean year here and there. But I was, as an alum, I was definitely pleased with what was the product that was being performed. There weren't good. Every now and then you get a team that's going to blow you out because of matchups. I mean, Missouri, they never matched up well with Missouri, except for maybe 1 year they lost 17-15. But then it was always like you'd lose like 4 3-point matches and then get decked twice. It looks worse than it is. So I think Steve did a really good job at ODU. And I think he did just as good as anybody else would have done in that job, because Steve wasn't looking to jump to his next job, whereas you get a lot of those big time, those Big 12, Big 10 assistants. Oh, I get a head job, and then they see a little success and then they're gone. Stevie wasn't going to leave. So he could live at his own house that he'd lived in for 20 years. So I thought he did a fine job. So there's levels to it, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You talk about like how skewed dual meets can look sometimes because, you got narrow margins and you're losing 1-point matches for 4, and then you get a pin or something. What are your thoughts on changing the scoring system? We've had Coach John Hangy was recently on from Rider, and also Coach Ferrero from Clarion, and they talk about whatever points you earn in the match is the points that go to the team score. What do you think of that?
I love the idea, because we have and this is a weird thing, because I'm talking to my wife. My wife's not a wrestling person, so I can bounce things. I'll sit there and ramble on, and she'd be like, wrestling has this problem with it's hard to follow. So why is wrestling hard to follow? So let's compare it to the other sport that I work with, hockey. It's a team sport. It's simple. You're competing once a day. It's team versus team. Score, you put the puck in the net, you score. Like in basketball, you put the ball in the hoop, you score. Football, you cross the end zone, you kick it through the uprights, you score. It's simple. It's team versus team. Now, when we look at it, wrestling, for me to do, I've done this thing called short time shots. I've tried it in multiple different iterations over the years to do like a nightly scoreboard show, trying to pay attention to what I can. The problem is you get on the weekend. I'll do it for the dual meets, and then we get into the heart of the tournament season. So we have an open tournament here. Then we have a team scored tournament like the Keystone the same day. Then you have another open tournament with Division II teams, and then you have dual meets where you wrestle 3 and 4 times during a day, or a single duel. You've got so much data in one day to try to comprehend, and you've got half your season, or actually more than half, 75% of your season is dual meets, and then you end your season in a format you haven't wrestled except for maybe 2 or 3 times the rest of the year, because it's a team component in an individual sport. That by itself is confusing with the sport. And I say this because I didn't come from wrestling initially. I didn't see my first match until I was 15 years old. I didn't put my shoes on for the first time until I was 16. And I counted the lights pretty quickly and learned that you can mash your opponent's face into the mat when they're face down on the mat. Thank you, Emil Cochet, for teaching me that the hard way. But when it comes to wrestling and watching it as a sports fan, and that's how I try to apply it. I don't try to say wrestling person. I'm looking at it as a sports fan. I love upsets. I like watching the round ball tournament and the March Madness. That was my life growing up with sports. So when you look at it, it's like, you're going to score a match this way, and then you're going to score it another way. And then, well, wait a minute. One of the best examples I've seen is how to compare it to basketball. It's like, well, you're not going to limit Michael Jordan to 6 points a game. So why not come up with a situation where that point scored is a point earned? I know Wade Chalice has had a variation of it. We have a margin of victory kind of thing we had on the Matt Stat show. But there's Kyle Klingman and Andy Hamilton, I think, broke it out the best a couple years ago on the match show. And they looked at, dual meet, point scored is it. A fall, say a fall's 25. Well, you could have 3 falls, 3 falls beat 7 falls. Beat 7 decisions. Yeah, it could. We have a situation right now where 4 falls beats 6 decisions. That's on the books right now. It happens maybe once or twice a year. So what is it about? There's no dual meet championship right now. So really, what does it matter if the team score in a dual meet is what it is? It's an arbitrary scoring system to begin with. Okay, we've got our point. So, okay, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. Why? No, why? That's the way we've always done it. It used to be 5, 5, 3, 2 for a tie. I could go back in the rule books. I've got a pile of them behind me and see what it was. They add the major decision. They add the tech fall. We get various points. If you beat a guy by 15, why shouldn't your team get 15? There has to be a cutoff because you don't want to run it up. Just have one guy score 70-2, and then that's the dual meet. There's levels to this. So you keep the tech fall, you keep the difference. You make a pin worth more, and you also make the forfeit the most debilitating thing in a dual meet. You don't ever want to forfeit a match. So make that worth more than the pin. So you're putting somebody out there because people they want to pay to watch a match. They want to watch 10 matches. They don't want to watch 8 because, we're saving a guy or, we got a red shirt we don't want to burn. So I'm a big proponent of changing it to that point scored, point earned method with, there's limits because we need to stop worrying about the minutia with that. It's like, well, you can have a guy that's up 15 with riding time and then lat drops the guy for 7. Okay, yes, you can have a 22-point technical fall. It is absolutely possible for that to happen. Why are you going to make a rule for the outlier that happens 1 out of 1,000 matches? So let's stop spending so much time on the minutia and the what ifs and just wrestle with it. Give it a try. There's no dual meet championship. What's the harm in it? The reason is I don't see it doesn't affect the outcome of the match. The guys are still wrestling to win. Okay, I beat you by 17 instead of 6. You still won. I don't see a problem with it.
Jason, you mentioned growing up a sports fan and kind of disconnect with your wife because she's not a wrestling fan. And I feel like with the coverage of wrestling, it gets a lot inside baseball, and we kind of lose the outside and stuff you did with Rocked Up. You take the ground level of something that people might not care about in the wrestling community because it's not big. There's no stars going there, but you kind of follow the growth of it. What do you think we can do as a wrestling community, as wrestling creating content that can be more sports-like, that can get more of the outside audience? Or do you just think it's one of those things where there's such a disconnect? Because if you look at the NCAA's ratings over the past, 10 years, they go down every year. How do we get that number up to the casual viewer?
So the ratings thing, if you look at every other sport, their ratings are down too. If you look at the Final Four, and I did this because I know, I've mentioned Wade before, and he loves to get on Facebook and tout, the stats and stuff. You look at the stats, and I don't have it in front of me, but there was some stats out there that showed that one year men's basketball viewerships was down 13 million people. Like 13 million people. Like there's ebbs and flows with viewership. Sometimes, okay, back in the 90s, it was like, how bad is UNLV going to mudhole everybody until that year that, they beat Duke by 31 year, and then Duke beats them in the semifinals and the Final Four the next year. High drama. You got the villain. You want to see him get knocked off in a team sport. So there's the stories that are captivating there. What also helps those sports is the St. Peters of the world. Those upsets, that 16 beating the 1, the Maryland Baltimore County beating the University of Virginia, like those things, like in women's basketball, Harvard beating Stanford back, I think it was in 1998. It was the first time it ever happened. It was in women's basketball. The getting the story, it's the hook. Okay, telling the stories, but and this is one gripe that I have with our sport is, and I boil it down to the excuse on certain people, like, why won't people watch women's wrestling? Be like, well, it's not very good wrestling. Well, why do you watch high school wrestling? That's not very good wrestling compared to the Division I championships. So stop putting qualifiers on why you won't watch something. I think we need to be better wrestling fans, not just fans of one team. And I'm not throwing shade at Iowa when I say this here. There's a ton of Division III schools in the state of Iowa. That's where a ton of their coaches come from. and their high school coaches come from. You've got great programs there. You got Simpson, BV. You've got all these great schools. Wartburg, of course. That's where these coaches are coming from. So if you're a wrestling fan, why won't you go watch Cornell College, which is 15 minutes away from Carver Hawkeye? Oh no. You won't go watch back when Michigan State and Indiana were really bad, for example. It's like you won't go to Carver to watch Michigan State and Indiana and watch the Hawks beat them 50-3. I only want to watch the best. So you only want to watch one event a year is what you're saying. We need wrestling fans to be wrestling fans, not just I'm a Penn State wrestling fan. Okay, great. They're good. You go to Penn State matches. I'm an Oklahoma State wrestling fan. Great. How about why can't you watch CSU Bakersfield? Why can't you watch the MAC? There's so many duels that are streamed on ESPN Plus and Flow and the outlets now. The opportunity to watch more wrestling, go to more wrestling. Some places don't even charge for admission, which I think is ridiculous because that means there's no value to what you're offering. But I feel like it's going to be a hard sell for the fan base that's so used to wanting to watch. I only want to watch Penn State, Iowa. I'll go to the NCAA championships. And it's like, our fans are great. NCAA championships. Yeah, it's a 3-day event. It's a party. It's our Mardi Gras. Of course, that's the outlier. Our dual meet attendance is growing. Our viewership is down, and parts of that, back to where I'm coming back to this, is the amount of cable subscribers. If you look at the percentage of cable subscribers that we've lost, and say if wrestling is 1% of that, that is fairly equivalent to the viewership that we've lost since 2013, because we like to look at 2013 is that peak David Taylor, Kyle Dake year. Well, the viewership and the cable subscribers has gone down, almost matching the percentage of fans that we don't have watching. So it's not the sky is falling type of moment. I think we need more people in the stands. I think we need more dual meets. I think we need a dual meet championship, that every duel needs to matter. I think we need to make sure that 4-date rule stays, so we're not forfeiting matches. I think, we need to have coaches also stop gaming the qualifying system. And, back in the day, we have a lot better health and wellness and mental training and physical stuff about it now. So yeah, athletes are healthier now, but sadly, I want to see Aaron Brooks wrestle more than 14 times a year. Like John Smith, I think, wrestled 51 times his junior year. To do that now would be, Kale wrestled upwards of 40 matches a year for 4 years. So, I want to see our stars wrestle more, but I also want to see them healthy in March. I think our season's too long. I think we need a dual meet championship. I think, we hang everything. March is all that matters. Well, our sport suffers if March is all that matters. We need our fans to be more open to going to events that aren't just theirs. If you live next to UPenn, go down to watch Princeton. You live close enough to go to these schools, go watch them. What's stopping you?
So bringing up those schools that we live close enough to go watch, Rich and I, we lived in Denver and we used to go to UNC matches all the time. They actually have a good community there. A lot of people go to those matches. I know you cover Augsburg matches. You mentioned Waltenberg before. What schools, smaller schools, do you know that have really good communities that people might want to go check out a match there because it gets a good crowd?
Well, I've been gone from the East Coast for a long time, so it's really hard for me to say what's it like now at York College, which is in central Pennsylvania. I lived about 30 minutes from there. I'd see them go wrestle. So they'd have, when Tom Kessler was the coach there before Dwayne Bastress took over. Dwayne's had some good teams, but there was a year York College beat Clarion in a dual meet. So there's good D3 action, and Dwayne Bastress was on that team. And you can go up to TC&J. Joe Galaney's had some great teams wrestle there. Up in the Northeast, you can't throw a rock without hitting a D3 team. The New England has so many Division III teams that you have an opportunity to watch wrestling. And I've seen some of those gyms. I'll pull up like a random New England college stream, and that's in somewhere in New Hampshire, I believe. But they are the Pilgrims, if I'm not mistaken. And they've got a gym full. And here's the thing: the gym's not very big. You don't need 15,000 people at Carver or at Bryce Jordan or Gallagher-Iba to have a great wrestling environment. You need 500 loud people. If it's you just need the gym half full, but you need them loud and energized. So part of that too is on the coaches and their staff, and also on the athletic departments. If you're going to have an investment in a wrestling program, put a little bit of effort in getting your student groups there to have, we do at hockey, we've got the bubble ball wrestling, or the stuff in between sessions. We've got a mac and cheese eating contest. We got some random promotions. Get the fraternities and the sororities in the building. Get the alumni in there. So, but small schools, there are exceptions. Wartburg and Augsburg draw well, especially when they're wrestling each other. St. Cloud up here in Division II, they've won 5 national championships, a couple hundred a match. Little Rock, when I go down there, I mean, they've been floating around that 1,000 match mark. I mean, Oklahoma State, they had a big crowd. When they beat Arizona State, they had a big crowd. When their first duel against Ozarks, they had a big crowd, which was a Division III school in Arkansas. So part of that is just being able to, and this is back to the thing, we need dual meets in a season that's not stretched out because, okay, we got 2 duels in November. You don't have a home duel until early February. That doesn't help you bring people in and enjoy that hour and a half, 2 hours they spend at your place. So part of that is our system, our scheduling is fractured. So when we have a great atmosphere, you can't go back. I get to go to St. Cloud hockey 19 times a year. My kids love going. It's a Friday, Saturday, one weekend they're home, then they're off, and then they're on the road. So we have these weird, and then, okay, we're home. Okay, now we have a tournament. We're at Milan. How do we keep up with the tournament? Well, go to track wrestling, go to Flow Arena. We don't really do ourselves favors with how we're structured, but our scheduling really doesn't give us those opportunities. Now, this is where you point out Northern Colorado. When I lived in Colorado Springs, I went up there and I saw them wrestle North Dakota State. I mean, they had a couple hundred people then, back when Ben Charrington was the coach. So, Troy's getting people in the door. Now, the key is getting these administrators and these athletic departments put a season ticket out there, make it worth something, have it valuable. I mean, I'll sit here right now for the video. I have my season tickets from St. Cloud State Hockey right here. You go up and you get them at a coach's dinner, or Doug Schwab hand delivers them at UNI. So do something to embrace yourself in the community. You got to have tickets, make it valuable. $10 or something. $10 a duel is cheap. I mean, are you going to make any money on it? But make it valuable, make it an event. You've got to have some value behind it. So those big crowds are great, but it's not always just a Beauty and the Beast where you get gymnastics next to it. So you need to do it without gimmicks. Hey, a gimmick gets them in the door. Make sure they have a good experience when they're there, though. I don't know if I answered that question. There's so many different tangents you can go off with that crowd question, because I've been tracking the attendance for 15 years. So it just kind of irks me sometimes. Like, why don't we show up more? We only show up for the big guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we would take in School of Mines too. We would go out to Golden to take in some of their matches. Those were fun. It's probably the most college wrestling we took in, even being from New Jersey, not even catching that many Rutgers matches before it really got a full head of steam.
Do you know the nickname of the name of the mascot at Colorado School of Mines? Well, they're the Ore Diggers because
yes,
but what is the name of the borough? That's the best thing. Austin DeVue, their coach, is like Blaster the Burrow. It's just one of the coolest mascots in college sports. There's a burrow.
Yeah, well,
Rich just upped you on college.
He did.
Man. That's
I'm a geek. Dude, everybody that's probably heard me before knows how much of a nerd or geek I am about stupid random trivia. So mascots,
I appreciate
is one of those
it.
things too.
I fancy myself a bit of a mascot savant, so you just up my game a little bit. Curious, talking about the dual meets and a dual championship and the structure of the season. Are you, with your research and what you've done with the guys, do you favor a split season, a fall and a spring season, maybe just one season? Do the dual before the individual championship, keep the individual championships a team score? Where are you at with all that stuff?
For years I've kind of been non-committal because full disclosure, I still work as a consultant with the National Wrestling Coaches Association, and Mike Moyer has been trying to work on a dual meet championship for as long as I can remember. So this is not me speaking as a representative of the NBC. This is me speaking as a wrestling fan who's given 30 years of my life to this sport. And I know there's people out there that have done it longer, but here's just what I see it, again, coming from that sports fan turned wrestling, sycophant, for lack of a better term, is we need our athletes not to hate our sport. I didn't wrestle long enough. Matter of fact, I mean, my wrestling career on the mat, you could probably write it on a Post-it note. I mean, I got a medal at the Bethel Open once, second out of 2 guys. So I'm not here. I'm not talking about my experience, but being around the wrestlers and living with the guys in college. I was in college 7 years as an undergrad. So, I'd sit there and I'd sit there in a sauna and crack jokes with some, Jake Carnes at Point Pleasant Point Pleasant Borough, New Jersey. He was a hard weight cutter. It's like if he wasn't cutting his butt off, he wasn't going to wrestle well. He's got to be like cutting in the last minute for him to wrestle well. And I'd sit in a sauna with him and he just crack up to keep his mind off of things, And I'd live with the guys, so I know Thanksgiving night, we'd get in a van and drive to Lock Haven for Matttown. Like, that's not fun. Christmas, we need and when people come back, they sometimes leave our sport because it just gave them a bad taste in their mouth. They're hurt. Their bodies are beaten up. And what do they get out of it? They suck their bodies out. And, they suck their bodies down and stunted their growth for how many years because of bad coaching tactics. Now we've got better health and knowledge on it, but let our sport have Thanksgiving and Christmas for the first time, for goodness sake. Like, let them not have to cut weight. Let's start in January. Okay. Yeah, you're going to be dropping some weight, but let's start in January, end in April, condense the season. I don't think the team score matters one bit at the NCAA championships. That might be heresy. Oh, you go for the team score. 5 teams go for the team score. 10 or 11 teams. 11 teams have won national titles in history. The last new team was Ohio State. We had 8 years ago. I mean, it's not a level playing field in terms. And then again, we're looking at how do you score? Oh, well, it's advancement. How many people under the age of 40 can hand score a tournament? You can't do it. You can't. You know how you hand score basketball? That's +2. That's +3. That's +1. Easy team sport. We're adding some weird tournament scoring metric that we've had to tweak because, somebody's scoring too many points on the backside. Make it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. Let's keep our sport simple. The team score doesn't matter. The Citadel fans aren't going, man, I hope we finish 35th. Like, they're hoping for their guys to have individual. We go because it's a party. You know who cares about the team score? Penn State when they're going to win it. Iowa when they're going to win it. Oklahoma State when they're those teams that rotate each year. They care about the team score because they know they're in the mix to win it. Those same teams are going to be in the mix for a dual meet championship. But you know what's also going to be in a dual meet championship? Central Michigan one year was number 2 in the country. They had beaten Oklahoma State at the Virginia Duels, and it's not that distant of a memory. Boise State was ranked number 2 in the country because they had a solid dual meet team. Edinburgh beat Penn State, the Virginia Duels, dual meet team. Like, we're talking duels, one-off duels can make those matchups. Oh, wow. Your your fluke pin happens. Oh my, it's shaking the whole impact of the dual meet. I love that. Duels are great. The best teams, the concept against us, the best teams are going. What sport does the best team always win? Who was 18-0? Was it the Patriots that year 18-0, or was it the Giants? I can't remember. That Super Bowl. Best team didn't win, did they? That's sports. Why do we have to make something that best team's always going to have to win? That's not natural in sports. The best teams get knocked out in the first round all the time because, you know what? Any given day, we need that any given day attitude that we love so much in the individual aspect of wrestling. Why not bring that to the team concept? That's one thing, any given day. So I don't think the team score matters. I don't think we'll sell one less seat if you take the team score out of it. You got Jersey. There's no team score at the state tournament, right? No team score. The team's titles are decided by duels of schools of a similar size, the groups. Boardwalk Hall doesn't have a problem selling tickets, does it? Because nobody's there for the frickin' team score. And that's one of the greatest wrestling states in the country. Say borrow New Jersey's model. Okay, D1, there's your duels. And if you need to break it up to P5 and then, the autonomous 4, whatever they are with the NIL and whatever they're going to do with the full cost of it, everything they're talking about, if they need to break them up into divisions for a dual meet, fine. That works great. The team score is a weird way to score something that the person off the street or even the wrestling fan doesn't know how to do. I don't know why we're beholden to this team scoring thing. You can have 4 guys go to a tournament and win the tournament. You can have 4 guys win it, but in a dual meet, you got 4 guys win unless they get pins. We talked about earlier. 4 guys is not a team. So it's like, I don't understand the pushback so much about the team score. What's so beholden about a team score? That's the way we've always done it. Dual meets have the opportunity to grow the sport. Now, why is nobody showing up for the dual meets in the past? Because there's not a trophy with it. Yeah, it's an NWCA trophy. That's not Director's Cup points. And AD doesn't care about the NWCA trophy. They want Director's Cup points. John Smith wanted a banner. It's like, an NCAA title is going to change the complexion of that. If there's an NCAA blue disc on that trophy and Director's Cup points are at the risk, the mood is going to change from the ADs, from our wrestling coaches' bosses. So I guess my opinion has gone from non-committal to like, hey, I love the tournament. We're not changing the tournament. We're just changing something that nobody knows how to do anyway and taking that out of it. Is that going to change the upsets? Oh, you might change a guy going for a major. Okay, for a half a point on the backside. Really? Come on. I just think we lack rational thought sometimes in how we apply general thinking to the sport, which is a great sport. There's things that are wrong with it, but I don't think that the sacred cow is in a team scoring situation where I have to announce every year at the Nationals how many points each round is worth. You shouldn't have to do that. ESPN has here's what the points are this round. Like, you don't do that for other sports. You don't say, well, this round they're advancing to the Sweet 16 and they're going to get 15 points on the team. It's not like it's team scoring stupid. Riding time stupid. Team scoring is stupid. Dual meets are awesome. There, you're the first guys to ever get me to say that publicly on this thing.
Well, you just dropped a lot of knowledge, and I know Rich wants to get into it, but
Durant, man, I'm sorry.
That's a good one. It's gold.
One thing I can't let go. I have to go back, and I know Rich has to too. You mentioned Jake Carnes. We are from Point Pleasant Borough. Jake Carnes is from Point Pleasant Beach, so that's just like you're talking to the right guys. We're wrestling hipsters. You mentioned Jake Carnes.
We could throw a Jeff Jacobs reference out there too.
Oh my God.
Throw that one out there.
He was on my team.
Jeff Jacobs.
Yeah, he came down to that place in Norfolk for a little bit.
Yeah, dang, you do know your stuff, sir. So try to get back to the original point you mentioned. Yes, we do need that national dual championship.
Real quick. I got to go back to Jersey. First year I ever went to the NCAAs. Me and Jake drove up to Albany, 2002. Stopped at his house in Jersey. Before we got on the road to Albany the second day, splitting the trip up, we went to Jersey Farms and had the absolute best pork roll, egg, and cheese sandwich I've ever had in my life. I am team pork roll. I am not team Taylor ham. But I walk in, and it was the most Jersey thing ever. Oh, hey, Jake, how you doing, honey? I'm like, we are in flipping New Jersey, and I freaking loved it. So I am team pork roll, and I am team Jersey Farms.
Well, you just gave us some gold for some clips there, because that's one question we ask all of our New Jersey guests. Is it pork roll or is it Taylor ham? And right now it's predominantly pork roll. It's just those Jersey guys that coach at those Ivy League schools that like to call it Taylor ham.
It's the guys that live near New York is what it is. Those North Jersey guys,
Yep.
The shore knows where it's at.
That's right.
Yep. You know it.
Damian Hahn, it's team pork roll.
So with all those matches, right, and then now you're going to throw national duels in there, do you think there's a way to kind of build the season up to that national duels? Do you think you need to have 10 teams in the same location at one time? How do you think you do it at the beginning of the season, doing it at the end right before the NCAAs, make it a qualifier? How do you think you go about that?
So that is one of the biggest sticking points I realize with the ideas, because the season, I'm advocating shortening the season, but I'm also advocating opportunities to see athletes more time. The sport is hard enough with all the weigh-ins. I mean, making weight 16 times throughout the course of a year, and then you got the back-to-back weigh-ins and the conference days, and then 2 and 3 day weigh-ins at nationals. So the problem we get into is the good teams that keep advancing. They're the ones who get chewed up, because they've got to go, okay, I've got to go, especially in the Big Ten okay, you're a Big Ten team. Oh man, the opponents are tougher. You've got the cream of the crop in Division I, typically in the Big Ten. That's where you want to wrestle. They're hitting each other. They go Friday, Sunday. So they're wrestling every, during their regular season for 6-7 weeks. That's a great time for a season. Okay. Then you've got, then you go to your conference tournament, then you chew each other up, and then you got a week off. We're starting in January. You're not going to be, the drawback is, we're pushing into freestyle, or, they're going to be training anyway. No, then don't let them, you get on campus in September, you're already working towards certification in October. Let the guys enjoy let the freshmen get acclimated to their first semester of college. I'm not, one of Mike Moyer's speaking points on this, and this is not like AD speak or Moyer speak. This is legit. The toughest semester on most of these kids is when they get away from home. They're in the wrestling room, and they've never they're getting taken down and beaten like they've never been beaten before. Got a 4-time state champ going in, can't get a takedown for an entire month. And then, you put him in open, he's cutting weight, he's cutting down because he's got to make the lineup. He's never had to cut because he's always been the best guy in his room and on his team. you're throwing a lot of situations at first year college students and a lot of first generation college students at that they don't really know how to acclimate all those things together. So give them a semester to really get their grades up. First of all, be eligible. Get on strong academic footing. Don't go into that Midlands weekend or that scuffle weekend, after your midterms, and now you're on academic, or after your finals, you're on academic probation. So shifting the schedule in, and we got to just say, okay, we got this many weeks. You're into April. You lop a month off, but hockey starts October. They take the entire month of December off, basically. So that's an interesting thing you could do. The problem again is we've got two different formats. We determine our individual championship. I think we can do our, okay, we had our dual team championship. Then, okay, week off? Then we can, okay, here's all your qualifying tournaments. Okay, week off, here's your championship. So you might, that last month of the season, maybe into May. Are we making it a spring sport? We making it a winter sport? Looking at the details of the calendar, how much time do these guys need off? That's where I struggle with how do we do it right? Okay, we obsess over the wrong things. This is one thing we need to look at, I think, better to see how can we make it work, and then worry about the minutia of, a dual meet scoring situation. Now, and that's not, if that's important, you set your dual meet thing, then you can worry about that. That's minutia right now because it matters not to the end of the season. Nobody cares if you win a dual 18-17 and we won a match to get a better seed at the conference tournament. Okay, great. That's great coach speak. So I do not know the answer to that question. I do not. I know that there's a couple things that have been floating around that have different scenarios. I think the dual meet schedule. Look at the ACC Friday night duels. That's awesome. It's must watch Friday. You got the ACC and then right into Big Ten on Friday. Dual meet, easy set schedule. It's gonna be on Friday. It's gonna be on Sunday. Why can't we do most of the season like that? If we're worried about guys getting all these extra matches, well, okay, here's 14 dual meets, or multiple days is multiple matches is kind of tough. I don't know. Coaches don't like to do more than two. So, how do we do that? Do we do more 8-team dual meet tournaments on the front end in lieu of actual competitive tournaments and one major midseason tournament? I don't know the answer to solve that riddle, but there's options to be out there. It's just, the problem is we got 80 coaches that don't want to see eye to eye because it's, the teams that have don't want to change, and the teams that have not want to get there. And there really isn't a middle ground. So that's the one thing that is bothersome is we all say we want to grow the sport, but we are team first, sport second, especially at the Division I level. I can't say that the same way for Division II and Division III, because I see those guys hanging out with one another, tournament day's over. All right, we're going to go. You're sitting there having dinner with, coach. You're not going to see Tom Brands and Cale Sanderson sit at the same table after day one of a tournament. You see that all the time at the conference tournaments and at the mid majors, and then at D2s and D3s and the NAIs. There's a camaraderie there. It's like, yeah, we're here. We love this. We're here for the kids. I feel like it's almost too much of a job profession sometimes, and there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of money. These coaches are getting paid a lot. So I wish there was, the silver bullet, whatever you want to call it, to get everything out. So I don't have an answer to that question. It's a long way to say I don't have an answer to that question.
All right.
Do you think that's changing at the Division I level a little bit?
We are unsure. Here's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen with sports at the Division I level. We got a guy leaving UNLV because he was verbally promised. Come on. We had, what we had to do to survive in college.
Yep.
I'm not going to, there were points where we would go into the locker room and take the giant roll of paper towels because we were so poor we didn't have toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got talking about guys coming for NIL money. Come on, the haves have. Okay, I love college football, but I hate college football. And then college basketball is less of the moneymaker, but it's also funny. The NCAA crowns a Division I football champion, but it's not Auburn or Alabama and those guys. It's North Dakota State, That's the NCAA Division I championship. The S is that trophy with the big glass, the whatever it was the BCS, now the college football playoff. It's not an NCAA championship. So they're making all this extra money. I don't know. We can't move until football and these conferences figure out what's going to happen, because we can't really plan in advance. We can't have a system ready to go because we don't know what's going to happen. We are along for the ride. We are in the bus with lacrosse and soccer and swimming and track and field. We don't drive the bus. We have one voice out of 100 at the table. And if we have something planned, doesn't matter. It could change like that. Like, that's the frustrating thing. We're along for the ride. It's hard. It's when wrestling cannot control its own destiny at the state of sports that we have right now. And that's frustrating. It's very frustrating because we don't know. Every week something changes. With the realignment stop, come on. It's just, it's crazy what all these college athletes that they seem to care about. They care about 1% of the college athletes. They're not, these impacts, they have impacts on the Division III athletes. The Division III moves, but they have impacts on Division III. They have impacts on junior college and the NAIA. It impacts so few of the actual student athletes that it's like they're the collateral damage in the tug for all the millions and billions of dollars that the TVs and these contracts and these grant of rights deals all are about. So yeah, it's frustrating as a sports fan.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you. I can remember we used to get excited to give $20 for our meal money on the way home from a cross country or a track meet. And so to see some of the NIL stuff, and I caught that stuff with the UNLV player today.
Or the creative ways you'd pool your money on for a recruit on his recruiting trip, and how they were going to figure that weekend out, and which receipts you were going to find. So, now, I think I was listening to the college football podcast with the Yahoo one with Pat Forty and Ross Dellinger and Dan Wetzel, the Arch Manning's recruiting trip at Texas, on how many hundreds of thousands of dollars was spent on one guy's recruiting trip for Texas football. It's more than probably some conference wrestling budgets, like everybody in them. So football might pay the bills a lot of places, but a lot of places it's also not profitable. Yeah, great. Yes, you made $100 million. You spent $101 million. So that's another soapbox for another day.
Jason, we can get into a lot of rabbit holes with you. We want to be super respectful of your time. I got a couple more for you though.
All right.
You were just in Paris. You worked at the Olympics. How was it for you? How was this experience? How's it rank compared to your other experiences?
Everyone's different. All four have been different. So the 2012 first Olympics, working at USA Wrestling in the media department. So I'm just taking London in. Didn't have to learn a new language. My biggest problem was trying to navigate the subway, the underground, the tube. So London was great. London is one of my favorite cities in the world. My wife and I, my oldest daughter's middle name is London. My wife spent 6 months there studying abroad. So that's a city that has special meaning to us and this family. Rio being my first opportunity to announce was special. Seeing Helen become the first American woman to win Olympic gold medal in wrestling was still my number one wrestling moment of all time. The opportunity to get to announce that. And then, it was different because it wasn't in a wrestling city. London wasn't a wrestling city. Rio wasn't a wrestling city. And then Tokyo, there's no fans. And we had one of the greatest 2-second spurts of any wrestler in American history with Gable Steveson winning that. And it's like, again, the tree fell in the woods. There was only 30 people there to see it. So it was so nuts there because I had announced with a mask. I didn't know any Japanese. I was in my room for 2 weeks. Couldn't leave it except to go across the street to the venue. And then Paris, which I'd been for the Worlds in 2017. They did an amazing job. The Parisians were great, organized. My production team, Javi Sens was my producer who I work with in Tokyo, was fantastic. And then, seeing Amit and Sarah Hildebrandt both win, to see Lopez do something no human being's ever done. Paris was awesome. And my wife got to come out for the last day and a half. Then, some of my buddies, a couple Jersey guys actually came out. We are all in a group that went down to Munich afterwards for a couple days, did some beer gardens, went to the Zugspitze, saw Adele. So shout out to my boy Nate Shy and Brian Stoley. They were on that trip and their significant others. So enjoyed that. So, but Paris was, it's hard to say, Rio was my favorite for the competitive aspect. We had Helen winning. You had, on the flip side, you had Burroughs losing, which was like the most destructive thing of all those. And then you had the Mongolian protest, which was the most memorable thing. Kyle Snyder winning. Then we go to Tokyo, which was the weirdest one. And then Paris, it's hard because they're all great. You get that opportunity. So Oh, it's so hard to kind of wrap up. I mean, that could be another hour right there saying which event I like the best. But the Olympics are all special because that is the pinnacle for so many of these athletes. It's like college sports, like the underappreciated non-revenue sport that we call them the Olympic sports. Well, you get to see them get their moment, once every 4 years, and it's a special thing. I tear up when I hear we say, ladies and gentlemen, the anthem of the United States of America, and I lost my mind when Helen won, just trying to keep it together, 8 years ago. So the Olympics are one of the most special things. And, we can talk about how corporate it is and breakdancing and BMX. It's, you know what, to those athletes, it's cool. But to wrestlers, to swimmers, to the track and field athletes, to the, like in the winter games, so like the biathlon guy, like those are their moments. You can't take that from them. So I'm Olympic nut. So I mean, say what you want about whatever you don't like about the Olympics, they are awesome.
We kind of touched on it there a little bit, but when you're doing the Olympics versus like the NCAA or the NAIA champions, maybe you follow some athletes, but you're maybe not as invested as when it's Helen or Jordan or Kyle or whoever from the United States. And you kind of touched on it when the national anthem was playing. But how do you handle the emotional highs and lows of the whole experience? Where maybe we weren't expecting, Helen's up against the, Goliath, and then Jordan's the defending champion. It swings the opposite way. I mean, what's that like as an American, as a broadcaster, and trying to compose yourself and still be the broadcaster while some of those highs and lows are happening?
Ultimately, you've got a job to do, and there you're allowed. I mean, the guy next to me, he's the Spaniard one, and they're sitting there watching Spain and France or something, a soccer game, and they're all cheering. The people, they're people up there. It's not as like, oh yeah, it's very rigid. You're not cheerleading over the microphone, but you can take a moment back, and like there's moments when American loses a tough match, and I don't have it's a button you press to record to do the PA at the international stuff. So it's not like a click microphone, but it's just like you put it down, you're like, dang it, or you're saying other choice words, it's kind of to yourself. And ultimately though, like the Olympics is like the one thing where it's like I really don't. That's the one place where yeah, I care who wins. I'm impartial, like at the Worlds too. It's like when Sadulayev pinned Snyder. It was like, you know, I there's like the little devil pops up your shoulder, like no sell it, no sell it, and it's like no, the boom, you've got to do it the right way. So you give the big pop for Sadulayev, Abdul Rashid. It's not like Abdul Rashid Sadulayev. You don't no sell it. So there those things come through, but ultimately it's a professional thing. You don't get those gigs by being a cheerleader and being overly homeristic on a microphone. So you have to compartmentalize, and you have the opportunity to go talk to the athletes during breaks and stuff. We have some access. We're working back. If I need to go say, I need to give Sarah Hildebrand a high five or something, I can do that and it not, be visible to the public. It's one of those things, it's a sport where when you get a sport specific announcer has those relationships. So the guy I did wrestling with, Laurent, he's a big judo guy. He knows all the judokas. So he was in that same boat watching the French, who are amazing in judo. And so, he's super excited about their performance, but he can show it a little bit on the microphone. But when he's out, you can get away, and you can take your impartial hat off, and you can give an athlete a fist bump, a high five, or a hug. So there's places for that. Usually it's not in the venue though. So when Helen won in Rio, I saw her outside the next day. I gave her a hug, and then I don't know Amit, so I'm not not gonna hug somebody I don't know, but it's one of those things. So, but Sarah I've known her since before she was on the junior world team in 2012. Shout out Team Pattaya. I joke her about same siding all the time. It's like, no, you don't same side it on dates. I'm like, yes, you same sided. I'm always team same sider. She wasn't, and then her and her boyfriend at the Worlds at the Olympics. I'm like, hey Sarah, you're same siding it. So you get a chance to share in those moments. It's their moment. You're just a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of it. Although I will say, one of the cooler things is when Aline Focken, that's Focken, I realize we're a family show. The German won the Olympics in Tokyo. I'm in a cab with her last year at the European. She's doing the broadcast. I'm doing the PA. And when she goes, yeah, you're all over my highlight tapes. I'm like, that's kind of cool. So there's always that cool factor with those moments, knowing that, you're kind of the soundtrack of those athletes' biggest moments. So I do really like that part of it.
Being as busy as you are, do you get to take in some of the other venues and some of the other? No.
No, not really. Just a little judo, a little beach volleyball. I mean, I'm there. I got to prep. It's jet lag. It's a lot of practice. We do a lot of practice when people aren't watching. I mean, we do a whole day of practice, and then we do it again, and then we do it again, and we do it again. So a lot of repetition.
Right on. I appreciate you sharing.
So you bring up the lady mentioning you're all over her highlights. Do you have a favorite PA reaction or a reaction where you don't even, it wasn't even a thought, it just kind of came out, and then afterwards you're like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
I nailed
Let me
that.
get the exact date on it. I know the kid, I know the tournament, I know the location. I'm just not sure the year. Hold on. Where is it? Let me just go back to the trusty database and type his name in so I can tell you exactly
Is this
where.
the NAIA
Yeah,
gentleman?
this was the
Yeah.
NAIA. So this would have been 2019. Sawyer Miller from Indiana Tech in overtime. And I just blurred out, "It's Miller time." I don't know why. It wasn't there. He hit it. And then when Matt Ramos pinned Spencer Lee, I mean, it's like you're just like you see it coming, you're like, and it was just like Purdue, you just if I find if you try to have something prepared, it usually falls flat. So the only thing that kind of works with is dad jokes, like when you set things up, like not in the moment. You don't want the moment. The moment's never about you. The moment's about the athlete. You're just providing that soundtrack. So, that Sawyer Miller match with Indiana Tech in 2019 in Wichita was just like, are you really like? I just will always remember that one because I'm worried about getting chastised because a lot of these NAIA schools are private Christian colleges, and here I am blurting out, and they're not even, there's Miller Lite's not even a beer sponsor. So, so I was worried about getting blowback. I was like, oh, I just made a beer reference, and it nobody even cared. So that's the one thing.
All right. And so here's my clickbait clip that we're gonna get up after this question because we had Matt Oliver on. He's a Division III coach in Alabama, and you cover all the college wrestling, NAIA, JUCO, D2, D3. Obviously, we know Division I is the king, but in your opinion, with the exception of Division I, what is the toughest college wrestling?
Like tournament or like,
Division, like is Division II tougher than Division III? Is
okay,
JUCO tougher than
so
all of them? NAIA?
Um, I think it varies. I think there's tiers to. I think D2 and the NAIA are very very similar because they're usually similar style of schools. They're both scholarship teams, so you can get the under the radar kid, or you can get the second chance kid, or you can get the JUCO transfer, for example. I haven't been to the Division II tournament in a long time because D2 and D3 overlap, and they have for the last probably 7-8 years. So the last D2s I went to was maybe 2013. So I would say that typically your champs are probably tougher in Division II. Typically, there are years where there are monsters that come through. Like Grandview had some monsters come through um, that were the NAIA champs. I thought were the best. And then D3, you can have that guy's a hammer. That guy's a hammer. I think when you go to the depth of it, the NAIA tournament's gotten to the point where it's unpredictable too. And the D3s always has a one seed lose in the first round. It didn't happen last year, and it didn't happen like one other time since I've been doing it. I love the unpredictability of those tournaments. So all tournaments are tough to win, so that's kind of a cop out answer. But I think the intensity I see at Division III because you've got more of the college. It's usually in a region that's closer for these schools. Again, I say that with not having gone to the Division II tournament in the last several years. You've got the Augsburg chance, and you've got the Luther chance. Then there are all these teams. Fire It Up or UW. You've got all these schools chance. You got like the D3s in lacrosse is it's wild, it's intense, and then you got this past year had a team race that was nuts. So in the NAI, the team race has only been an issue, the year Life knocked off Grandview, and then it's been close, and then until wheels fall off for somebody. So these NAI schools, they don't have the tradition because most of them are new programs that have been, launched in the last 20 years. So they don't have that decades and decades of alumni base. they don't have legacies going to wrestle for them yet. Whereas D3s are older schools. So I'd have to say experience wise and atmosphere wise, D3 seems like a tougher one to win because you get to that tournament, you're a monster. It's only now it's going to go up to 21 away, but it was 16 and 18. So I'd say D2 and D3 are kind of interchangeable depending on the year. The NAIA with its newness and it's big, it's 280. It's a 3-day tournament now. It's the second biggest tournament in the country. So just by sheer numbers, you take a loss early, oh, it's gonna be tough. So I hate to give it to short any of those divisions because it's I think it just depends on the year really. Because I could go back and look at last year and be like, I think D2 is tougher. And the year before I can be like, D2 in the NAIA. I think if you look at your 8th place guys across the board, I think your D2 guy is probably the best of them. But your champs, I think you can go interchangeably.
And with that said, what are your thoughts on bringing the D1 or the D2 and D3 champs back to D1?
Don't like it.
No.
No. And I feel like that gets resistance because it only happened for 17 years. That's what people don't understand. It used to be. No. It only happened when we had the divisional split up from in 73, 74, all the way to 90, 91, when like Dan Russell, I think was the last guy grandfathered in to do that from Portland State. No other sport gives you that option. So, fine. You want to be a Division I national champion, you go to a Division I school. You want to have that conversation with your coach, Mark Bauer at Nebraska Kearney. He's the AD now. He goes, the only thing he says I can't offer you is a Division I championship. You can win the Midlands. You can make the Olympic team. Tervel. Let's look at those guys. Like Tervel, All-Star Classic, had that great experience. And you know what? He didn't get chewed up as a guy that was third in Texas in a D1 room and hate wrestling. He went to a place where he could grow and become a 4-time All-American, 2-time national champion, Olympic bronze medalist. So you get one bite at the apple. That's the thing. If you want the opportunity to wrestle D1, have that conversation with your coach when you get there. Because a lot of these D3 coaches I know, like Pat Pecora, the late Pat Pecora, always say, if you want that opportunity, I'm going to support your opportunity. So if you want to transfer, you have every option to transfer, especially free transfers now. So you want to be a Division I champion, and that's your goal. You go to Division I school. You don't go to school without football and say you want to play quarterback. You have to make that choice. Life's about hard choices. You don't get to have one. You don't get to have everything. I mean, I didn't grow up in that. I kind of grew up in that era, but I didn't see wrestling until then, until the mid 90s. So, but I just I see if you want to be D1, go D1, and that's the choice you make. Early enough if you're good enough to wrestle Division I. So I mean that door swings both ways. D1 guys go down to D3. D3 guys want to be D1. You have that opportunity. It's Mola Wall got his degree from Central Oklahoma, was a D2 monster, had a chance to go D1, did. Could he have gone back to UCO and won another D2 title? Probably a sleptwalk through it, but he had the opportunity. David James, his coach, gave me the opportunity to go to Oklahoma State. Like, have that conversation early. It's not something you decide at the last minute. Oh, well, I won D3s a couple of times. I want to go try D1. So you make that choice. Life's about choices.
Love it. Love the perspective.
Final Four, Rich?
Yep.
Jason, you got time for the Final Four?
Yeah, let's move it.
All right.
I'll see
Jason,
how quick.
are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
How do you brew your coffee? How do you take it?
Black coffee. Every now and then I might have a little creamer, like on a Saturday morning if I'm having like a Danish or a donut or something with it. Like if we do the bakery breakfast, I'll have a little bit of cream in there, but usually just straight black coffee. Ground in the drip.
All right. Jason, do you have any daily practices or rituals you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Jason Bryant?
I need to do a better job at that. The only thing I really try to do, I try to get some type of movement in. I'm 250 pounds. I'm a type 2 diabetic. That's mostly of my own doing. So it's one of those things where if I want to live a healthy life, I need to make sure that I'm walking more. My wife has run a mile every single day this year. She has not missed a day. I need to be able to borrow some of that. So that's something that's been in a constant perpetual battle in my life is I need to do better at that. I feel like my eating's better. My weight has been under control for the last 15 years. There's some things that you just get older, things start falling out, like my hair. You got a little owls and my shoulders my knee hurts, so I need to do a better job at making sure I try to get active. And sometimes, a roll an ankle or, I don't like walking, there's something where I jacked up my foot or something and I don't want to. I try to walk at least an extra mile every day. That's one thing, and I need to do a better job at it, to be honest with you, because my wife's been crushing it.
Right on. Well, we support your fitness goals, my friend.
I need to support my own though. That's the thing.
Jason, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I'm trying to read a book a month, and I've kind of spun a little bit of that onto audiobooks. There's a book called Matt Return that a coach named Ron Lang sent me that I need to finish. I started it in July on the plane to Paris, and then I got about halfway through it. I have a Chuck Klosterman book that's an audiobook that I have, and I'm typically I binge a lot of the podcasts I listen to. I do listen to most of the wrestling podcasts, but I'm also being a new hockey fan. I love listening to the college hockey podcast because it's something I don't know about as much as there's a lot of stuff about wrestling I know about. A lot of those shows I'm not going to I'm going to listen to, and I might not learn something new. But college hockey podcasts, I will, and even from all these teams like Minnesota State, Michigan Tech, North Dakota, our bitter rivals, they have really good shows. So I like those shows when they come out right there. And then, those are the main things. So I'm a heavy podcast listener. Still haven't done a ton of the audiobooks, but I have an Audible account. I use that, but I've been trying to read a book a month, and I'm stalling a little bit through August and September.
All right. Well, you're traveling, so we'll give you a pass there. Do you have a guilty pleasure, Jason? Last one for you.
Well, you know what? I haven't had a chew in 8 years, so that used to be it. You know what? It's probably craft beer, to be honest with you. Or Air Jordans. I got into shoes during COVID, so I've got a nice little wall of about 20 pair of Dunks, Jordan 1s, Jordan 3s. I don't like the 4s. They hurt my feet. So yeah, shoes and craft beer. So
you like IPAs?
I like any type of beverage that's not gross. So I'm not a fan of the West Coast IPAs. I like some hops. I don't like sucking on a pine cone, It's like I like a good, like during the wintertime I like stouts. During summertime I like Hefeweizens. It's whatever's in season I drink. So I try them all.
Awesome.
Jason, thank you for your time tonight, sir. Thank you for the work that you put out there. We love following you. Keep up the good work.
I appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it. It's a great conversation, and love what you guys are doing. I've picked up a couple. I have to add the show more consistently to my rotation because when hockey season starts, it's like, all right, got to get that out of the way to prep for the weekend. So I'll make sure the Airey Bros podcast is back high on the rotation.
Thank you, sir.
We appreciate you, Jason. Thank you. And like Jimmy said, thanks for all you do for wrestling. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Take care.
Good night, sir.